I'm Mike, this is Tom. We are both from Avitas, Germany. What we do there is dealing with all the flaws that are found in antivirus software. And today we will be talking about runtime packers in the context of antivirus software and all the flaws and problems that come along when we talk about that issue. The subtitle says the hidden problem, and we actually mean two things by that. The first should be obvious, since runtime packers are used by malware authors to kind of hide or alter their code, and therefore avoiding easy zero-day detection by signatures. The other point is a bit more subtle, because we look at a vendor's point of view over there, and the problem is some of the vendors seem to hide from the actual problem, and this is something we will show during this presentation. The table of content, we will start out with motivation. We will explain the problem, illustrate it a bit, and tell you why we are talking about it. After that, we will go right into detail into all the issues that are involved. Of course, detection rates of runtime compressed files. Directly related to that are false positives. And finally, some other problems, like very severe crashes, but also more obvious things like very slow scanning speeds and system load issues and all that stuff. Finally, of course, some conclusions and proposals from us. Now, what is the problem? We already know what runtime packers do and what they are used for, but it's not clear how often are they used. Now, when you look at a whitelist, for example, a very recent one was the one from March 2006, and over 90% of the malware files over there are runtime compressed. This is one important number to remember. The other important number is about 30 different packers and encryptors have been used to compress all these files. And you will recognize some of the top ones like UPX or FSG and PESB. And it's also kind of remarkable that UPX is that much used because it's open source, it delivers unpacking code, and still many antivirus vendors fail to deal with that packer. Now, that was a short view over the whitelist as a whole, but when you start looking at single malware families, like the three ones we listed here, which are Bagel, MyTop, SDBot. Let's take MyTop as example. Again, over 90% of all the files in that family are runtime packed, and again, many different runtime packers have been used to pack these files. For MyTop alone, 20 different packers and over 32 different versions. So this makes it kind of clear which observations can be made. The first one, of course, nearly every malware is runtime compressed. And second one, which is pretty important to note, many different runtime packers are used not only over the whole whitelist, but actually over one malware family. And the goal is, of course, avoid easy heuristic and zero-day detection. And this leads to the conclusion, and this is pretty clear over here, because when antivirus software doesn't employ unpacking engines, it has to create a new signature for every new repacked version. And that's why antivirus software should be able to deal with a lot of packers, should be able to unpack them, and shouldn't be in the need to create new signatures for every repacked version. Now, this is the malware side of the view. Now, the vendor side. Runtime packers are around since the late 80s, and they have been used in malware for many years now. On the other hand, we know basically every antivirus software employs unpacking engines. So one should think everything is fine, because the problem is known, the runtime packers, and the solution is there, the unpacking engines. But then again, it doesn't seem to work like that. So nothing is fine. Why is that? Okay, the engines have flaws, which we will present some more. Of course, they aren't generic, and when they aren't generic, they need dedicated unpackers, and with new packers coming out daily, they just can't keep up with them. This is one side of the problem. Another funny point to note is there is actually a lot of activity and research in this area. When you look at conferences which are about the antivirus industry, like Virus Bulletin or ICA, you will certainly always see one or another talk which deals with emulation, unpacking, or other stuff that concerns runtime packers. We've listed 3 ones over here: Microsoft, Evido, Sophos. These were the guys that were giving these presentations, and so you could think these guys have smart people talking about these problems, so they should do pretty fine on runtime packers. But then again, when we checked them, the detection rates were pretty low, about 30% or 41%, and these are numbers that don't impress me, and they probably don't impress you either. And I think, yeah. You will see in McAfee later. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this makes it pretty clear why we should look a bit more into the actual detection rates, into the problems with false positives and all the other stuff that comes along. Before we do that, just a few words on what we did. We created basically 2 test sets, one malware test set, one false positive test set, each consisting of 10 malware or clean files, which have then been packed with about 40 different runtime packers in over 500 different versions and with different packing options used. This resulted in 5,000 files each, and we've sorted out the non-working ones and kept 3,000 for the malware test set. The test itself has been carried out in an automated environment, which we use at our company with 27 command line versions of these scanners, and we tested some additional 7 desktop products. Okay, now let's start with some of the results. We've chosen some of the most important products, not all. We tested over 30, which can be found in the additional materials, but in the presentation there's only a few selected ones. And as you can see, this slide basically tells you everything. The detection rates go from below 10%, which can't really be called detection because it's maybe just some lucky findings, to over 80%. But again, 80% doesn't really mean 80%. What we mean by that will be shown in a few slides ahead when we talk about false positives. Yeah, we don't want to go that much into numbers anymore, but just did a few interesting facts. When you look at malware that is used in whitelist and the packers that are used on that malware, you can basically make 2 observations. The first one is the products usually perform pretty good on packers that are commonly used in the whitelist. On the other hand, they perform usually pretty bad on packers that aren't commonly used in whitelist malware or that are not at all used in whitelist malware. And here are some numbers to prove that. When you take Symantec, for example, they had an average detection rate of about 60% over our test set. And when you compare it with the top 5 packers used in the whitelist, they do pretty good on that one. 3 with nearly 100% or even 100% detection rate. And even the other 2, SSG and MEW, are still about their own average. And same is true for most of the other products. Only Microsoft is a little exception here, but they are new to the business, and you will excuse that, I guess. Next slide is basically the other side. This is the poor performance on packers which aren't commonly found in the whitelist. Again, let's have a look at Symantec. If you remember, they had an average rate of about 60%, and on these packers, they only detected 33% of the samples we used, just 18%, 22%, and same is true for most of the other products again. Finally, every product missed malware which was packed with one or another runtime packer. For example, Armadillo seems wanted. Microsoft, Symantec, and Trend Micro missed the malware which was packed with that one. And also McAfee and Kaspersky had problems with a few runtime packers. Okay, so much for the obvious detection rate stuff, and now some more stuff from Tom.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. Detecting is one problem, but not detecting clean files is another problem. Let's take the suspicious problem as an example. The approach of some antivirus programs can create several problems because instead of unpacking the files and looking into the code, they just flag packed files as suspicious. This leads to good detection rates, okay, but in turn also to many false positives. A product that worked that way came from Panda. With 86%, Panda has a very good detection rate, but also many false positives. On the other hand, there are programs like Not32 that has very good detection rates too, but also only few false positives. On the right-hand side, you can see a figure, and in this figure, there were shown a comparison of false positives between common antivirus programs, and there you can see that usually false positives range between 10 and several hundreds. During our test, only 2 products triggered no false positives. These products came from Trend Micro and from Computer Associates. Besides the suspicious problem, there are also other kinds that could lead to false positives. For example, there are some packers that were rated as malicious by some AV vendors. An example for such a packer is Exebundle. So some Exebundle packed files are also flagged as malicious by McAfee or Microsoft too. On the other side, there are also bad signatures in use, which leads to the fact that some clean files are detected as certain malware. Kaspersky, for example, flags some Armadillo packed files as Elgobot or Arbot. Okay, so much for false positives. Now we'll come to the next topic, crashes and other problems. And there I will start with the scanning speed. To test the scanning speed, we used 2 test sets. The first test set was exactly the same that we used for the detection rates, and the second test set contained of the same files as the first test set, but in non-packed versions. Then we scanned over both test sets and compared the scanning time. There we came across that the scanning time increases a lot when you scan over non-packed files. For example, Dr. Web takes only 20 seconds to scan the non-packed files, but over 2 hours to scan the same files packed. In the figure below, you can see a comparison of scanning times between packed and non-packed files and between different antivirus programs. There you can easily see that every antivirus program needs more time, and that these time usually increase with a factor between 1.5 and 10. Now I want to present 2 of the problems we faced in our test. The first problem concerns the desktop product from Panda, and there we came across that when you scan over certain C-exe packed files, the scanner just stopped without any error. So when you have a set of files you don't want to scan, then you can easily place such a file ahead of your set and the rest won't be scanned anymore. Another problem concerns the command line scanner from Trend Micro, and there we saw that when you scan over certain petite packed files, the scanner just stopped. So you can easily exploit this bug for an denial of service attack. The only thing you have to do is simply send an email with such a file to an email gateway that uses Trend Micro products, and that's all you have to do. For other insecurities, we recommend the report listed below. Finally, I want to present our conclusions. During our report, we dealt with 3 main issues. First were the detection rates. There we find out that while detection rates of packers commonly found in the whitelist are pretty good, the detection rates of packers not often found in the whitelist has a lot of room for improvement. The next thing were false positives, and this point presented mainly 2 challenges. On the other hand, there's a suspicious problem, which leads to the fact that packed files are only flagged as suspicious. And the other problem are that there are bad signatures in use that also leads to false positives, but here the false positives, certain malware is detected by the antivirus program. The last point were all the other problems that came along. Most obvious the system load and the scanning speed problems when scanning packed files, and more serious problems when scanning. Yeah. So it comes down to the question: since we have seen problems with archive files last year, can we expect such problems next year with runtime packed files? To avoid such problems, we had some proposals. At first, it isn't enough to support packers found in the malware in the whitelist only, so other packers has to be covered too. Otherwise, virus writers could easily switch to yet undetected packers. But of course, there are too many packers in too many different versions, so you can't write an unpacking engine for each packer. So you have to combine the dedicated unpacking engines with generic approaches and other heuristics. To avoid PostPositives, some heuristics has to be improved. Just flagging packed files as malicious might work in gateway level, but not on desktops or server systems. And also some signatures should be more carefully chosen. At last, we had to recommend that possible problems in unpacking engines should be reviewed and fixed to avoid the issues we had with archive files last year. So our final advice to some AV vendors is: don't hide for the problem anymore. Okay, now I come to the end, and I want to thank for your attention. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, yeah?
Yeah, we've checked it out as well. The question was if the email gateway is vulnerable as well, right? Of Trend Micro. Yeah. It doesn't crash, but it stalls. Yeah. It just stops scanning. Yeah. No, it just fails. Yeah. But it should be fixed by now. But what? Yeah. We performed these tests 2 months ago, so both these problems are fixed by now. So, right. Yep. Yeah. Some shareware is to little shareware programs are using packers to make cracking them harder. It's a common technique. There is commercial software that uses techniques like that. When you look at dongle protections like Hasp or Sentinel, they use techniques like that, but that's of course nothing we tested. But not. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is a valid question. We didn't check out which programs actually use runtime packers, but there are at least a few which are using runtime packers. Yeah. I didn't get the first part. Yeah, sure. Most antivirus products offer such exclusion lists, or they just put it in quarantine and you can get it out later. No, we are talking about runtime packed files, and they are still executables.